one which was so externally observable that you really have to be blind not to see it. The divine wisdom is at work in recognizing tall buildings escalating around the world, particularly in Dubai, I understand. That when you see these tall buildings, you would know, hey, this is it, this is it. You are now living in that age. And if you're living in that age, there are profound intellectual challenges before you. Knowledge as traditionally transmitted is now inadequate. You have to augment traditional knowledge with something new and something greater than what you had before, to be able to understand the reality of this new age and to respond to it adequately. From the time you see those tall buildings, and then the divine wisdom again is at work in giving a second sign, the slave woman. And talid al-amatu rabbataha, that a slave woman will give birth to her mistress, not her master, her mistress. In these few words, kalamul anbiya, the words of the prophets, are huge knowledge in just a few words. And unless you stay with it and struggle and struggle and struggle to understand, to penetrate, knowledge is not going to come to you on a platter. No. وَأَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. You will get nothing other than that for which you strive and struggle. You have to plant if you want to reap. And I have a story to tell you a little later about planting and reaping. And so we go back now to the slave woman who will give birth to her mistress. In order to understand how she becomes a slave woman, we have to go to those 10 major signs of the last day. Number one is Dajjal. It is Dajjal who enslaves her. Who is Dajjal? He is the false Messiah. He is known as Al-Masih al-Dajjal. And I'm writing that book now. I could not write a word for the last 3 months because of this retreat. So I'm just waiting for this retreat to over so I can go back to that book. It is the 4th book in the quartet on Surah Al-Kahf. The first was Surah Al-Kahf, the text, the translation and modern commentary, and you have a little part of that in your folder. The second was Surah Al-Kahf in the modern age, and I enjoyed writing that book very much. The third was Gog and Magog. This was a more difficult book to write. When we praise and thank Allah, it's written. There's more to go into that book, but maybe a second edition, inshallah. And the fourth and the last one is Dajjal, the false Messiah, or the Antichrist, and then the quartet will be finished. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a promise to Banu Israel that He would send to them a prophet who would be their prophet, who would be known as Al-Masih, the Messiah. We're not so concerned with the meaning of the word Masih. What does it stand for? He's a prophet. And when he comes, he will bring back the golden age, because he will rule the world the way Sulaiman alayhi salam, Solomon, ruled the world from Jerusalem, from the state of Israel. And that state of Israel of Sulaiman alayhi salam was the greatest, the grandest state that history will ever see. He asked that Allah should grant this, Sulaiman alayhi salam. And Allah granted him that wish. So holy Israel is the greatest state that mankind will ever witness and experience. But then holy Israel was destroyed. And Banu Israel were expelled. And while they were in Babylon, prophets were sent to them to communicate a divine promise. That Allah was going to send to you a prophet who would be your prophet and who would bring back that golden age. Who would rule the world from the throne of Dawood alayhi salam, with a rule which will be eternal. And so they understood it to mean that we will rule the world one more time. And when we rule the world, it would be eternal. And that would be the end of history. This is there in their hearts. And so they're waiting for the Messiah to come. In order for the Messiah to rule the world, as promised by Allah, he would have to do 4 things. Number 1, he would have to liberate the Holy Land, which is under non-Jewish rule. Number 2, he would have to bring the Israelite people back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. Now they're in exile. Number 3, he would have to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land. Holy Israel must come back. And number 4, Holy Israel must once again become the ruling state in the world. These are logical deductions. Don't ask me, which hadith did you find that in? These are logical deductions. When Israel becomes once again the ruling state in the world, then the Messiah can rule the world from Jerusalem, and with a rule which would be eternal. But when Allah sent the Messiah to them, He sent the Messiah in a way to test them, and they failed the test because they said, she committed adultery. He is a bastard. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. And so they failed the test. And when he, as an adult, declared, I am the Messiah, the son of Mary, they said, no, a bastard cannot be the Messiah. And when he, as a child, performed all these miracles, when he spoke from the cradle, when he took mud and shaped it in the form of birds and blew into them, and by Allah's leave they became living birds and flew. هذا سحر مبين. That's magic. And so they missed the bus. And then they conspired to have him crucified. We want him killed, but we want him killed in a manner which will conclusively demonstrate that he could not have been the Messiah. If he is crucified, then that will accomplish it. Because the Torah says that whosoever dies that way is the cursed of Allah. And then they saw him crucified on the cross before their very eyes. There he is, on the cross, and he is dead before their very eyes. Now it is conclusively confirmed, beyond the shadow of a doubt, he could not have been the Messiah. Why? He's dead. He never ruled the world. What they did not know And what no one knew for